And the penalties for marriage are so high and the rewards now are so low. First of all, there's legal costs of marriage. There are so many men now who are just saying, you know what, it's just not worth it to me. I'm going to be stuck paying the alimony. I'm going to be stuck paying for child support. And it's not just legal reasons. It's also psychological ones where men feel that basically they don't really have rights in marriage. Women hold all the cards now in reproduction and all kinds of things, and men don't.
Well, that's all true. I mean, I agree with that completely. But it still doesn't absolve men of the responsibility to stop complaining about how the cards are against them and man up and become men, because you don't become a man until you assume responsibility.
What man would take such a raw deal? I don't consider that a man.
Well, it's not a raw deal. You derive deep satisfaction as a man by taking responsibility for other people. That's the only place you get deep satisfaction.
So this is the standard message. Men need to man up, and it's only when you accept responsibility for a family do you become a man. This is the traditional conservative or tradcon view that has a nostalgic yearning for some bygone era that doesn't exist anymore. But it seems that even the tradcons are starting to recognise that the tactic of shaming men into manning up isn't working. Prager University, which promotes conservative values, recently put out a short 5-minute video extolling the virtues of marriage and specifically the benefits it confers on men.
Marriage has a transformative effect on the behavior, emotional health, and financial well-being of adults, especially men. Men who get married work harder and more strategically and earn more money than their single peers from similar backgrounds. Marriage also transforms men's social world. They spend less time with friends and more time with family. They go to bars less and to church more.
I love this one. I wonder how many guys sitting in church on a Sunday morning wish they were getting hammered. It might be different living in the US, but in Australia, where 92% of the population don't go to church, the idea of spending more time at church as a benefit is laughable. But more to the point, look at the false dichotomy being presented here. You either waste time getting hammered with your mates or go to church. Of course, those aren't the only two choices. Now sure, if you're married with kids, then you should be spending time with them. But there are plenty of productive and unproductive ways you can spend your time as a single male.
In the words of Nobel Prize-winning economist George Akerlof, men settle down when they get married. If they fail to get married, they fail to settle down. My own research bears out Akerlof's view. Married men work about 400 hours more per year than single men with equivalent backgrounds. A Harvard study also found that married men were much less likely than their single peers to quit their current job unless they had another one lined up.
Well, of course married men are less likely to quit their job. They can't afford to. They have mouths to feed. So even if you're stuck in a shitty job you don't like, but you have nothing else lined up, you have to stick with it. Whereas if you don't have those responsibilities, you can afford to take time out and think about what you want to do with your life. I fail to see how a lack of flexibility in your work life is a selling point.
All this translates into a substantial marriage premium. On average, married men earn almost 20% more than their single peers.
So if you go back to the previous slide, married men work almost 20% more hours than single men, and that translates into 20% more earnings. Well, that's great, but what's the cost of living for a married man versus a single man? It's quite possible that even though the single man works less and earns less, he has more disposable income than a married man. And he has more spare time to spend that disposable income.
Why is there such a substantial marriage premium?
Substantial marriage premium? I don't think you made that case, but moving on.
There are at least 4 important reasons. 1, after marrying, men assume a new identity. Marriage is one of the last rites of passage into manhood remaining in our society, argues sociologist Stephen Knock. He found that marriage engenders an ethic of responsibility among men, as well as a newfound sense of meaning and status in the world. 2, married men are motivated to maximize their income. This means having a different attitude toward their job. They work more hours and make better work choices. Studies find that men increase their work hours after marrying and reduce their hours after divorcing. Sociologist Elizabeth Gorman concludes that married men are more likely to value higher paying jobs than their single peers. 3. There is evidence that employers prefer and promote men who are married. Married men are often seen as more responsible and dedicated workers and are rewarded with more opportunities to advance. 4th, and finally, married men benefit from the advice and encouragement of their wives, who have an obvious interest in their success.
So the first 3 points are really just a rehash of what came before, but this one deserves special mention. Well, of course your wife wants you to earn more, she gets a benefit. But this just adds to the general sense that the man is seen as a human doing. That's his function. He expends his labor largely for the benefit of other people. And yeah, he derives some benefit for himself if he has a successful marriage. But that is by no means guaranteed, as Dr. Helen Smith laid out at the start of this video.
And the penalties for marriage are so high and the rewards now are so low. First of all, there's legal costs of marriage. There are so many men now who are just saying, you know what, it's just not worth it to me. I'm going to be stuck paying the alimony. I'm going to be stuck paying for child support. And it's not just legal reasons. It's also psychological ones where men feel that basically they don't really have rights in marriage. Women hold all the cards now in reproduction and all kinds of things, and men don't.
Yeah, what she said.
The tragedy is that despite all the good news we keep learning about the benefits of marriage, the institution is in retreat. In 1960, 72% of all adults ages 18 and older were married. Today, it's 49%. In 1960, the average age at which men married was 23. Today, it's 29.
And that's probably a good jumping off point, because I want to focus more on what the future of marriage looks like given current trends. So let's take a look at some research from the Pew Research Center on marriage and attitudes to marriage. Firstly, the percentage of young people between the age of 18 and 34 that think a successful marriage is one of the most important things in their lives. You can see that a greater percentage of women believe it's more important than men, a gap of 9 percentage points, completely reversing the gap and then some from 1997. Moving on to career aspirations, and whilst in 1997 there was very little difference between men and women, more women now say having a high-paying career is one of the most important things in their lives. So this speaks to what women have been told for decades now, and that is, you can have it all. But is that a realistic expectation? Let's have a look at what never-been-married adults are looking for in a partner. Now, I had to abbreviate some of these categories for space so that the children category actually reads similar ideas about having and raising children. The third category, religious beliefs, reads same moral and religious beliefs. Education reads at least as much education. And race, ethnicity reads same racial or ethnic background. You'll notice that with the exception of education, women are more particular about what they're looking for in a spouse, but especially when it comes to having a steady job. That is significantly more important to women than it is to men. And that's important because of the next chart. Now, this chart measures the number of never married employed men per 100 never married women between the ages of 25 and 34. Now, why am I using employed men? Well, given that women put significant importance on prospective partners having a steady job, you can think of this as eligible men. So in the 1960s, there were plenty of eligible never married men around for the never married women. But today, there's a shortage. Now remember, this measure of eligible men just means they have a job of some sort. And given the trends in education that sees women now earning close to 60% of bachelor degrees, and the fact in the last chart we saw that women want someone with at least the same level of education, that pool of so-called eligible men will be even smaller. So what does this all mean? Well, quite simply, less people will get married, and those that marry the least will be men with lower levels of education. And that's borne out by the next chart, which comes straight from the Pew Research Report. As you can see, Male high school graduates or less were once those getting married most, but today 25% of them will never get married. Now, if you're not sure whether to celebrate or lament the lack of marriage opportunities for less educated men, well, that really comes down to your own perspective. I hate people telling me how I should live my life, so I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't get married and that you shouldn't start a family, particularly if that's important to you. But if we're going to talk openly and honestly about marriage, let's not just count one side of the ledger. You've got to count the liabilities as well as the assets. The Prager University video doesn't do that, and as a sales pitch to men of the benefits of marriage, it just simply fails. And if you're interested, I thoroughly recommend Dr. Helen Smith's book, Men on Strike. It's a quick read. It might be a little anecdotal, but it's still very informative.
Out
So
there.
what's
Frustrating. Hold on, I want to say something
suggestion
as a
is?
man, because this always has frustrated me when I see commercials when men sort of speak, they're acting like men, right? And all these commercials are out there where the man's like the lazy guy on the couch.
He's a tool.
But look what the
comes
culture
back-
is doing to the men. The culture is telling men, you are no good. You are no good in marriage. You are no good. Even you all are here saying man up to men, and that's a really negative message to be sending to men.
But what do you think the solution is?
The solution is for us to have fair laws and things for men, and to also, these commercials, we need to look at the culture and say, you know what, quit treating men like trash. Seriously, we treat men very poorly in this society, all the way from men who don't want to go to college anymore because there are many things in college that go on. It is a female-dominated place where men are not treated in a way that is fair. It's easy to sit here and say, as high-level men and women, that things are going well for you, but I've seen many men who are average, lower, and even higher-level men who aren't having such a good time.
Yeah.
And if you read my book, you might understand a little bit more about.
The book is called Men on Strike. It is compelling, and I think you make a compelling
An
argument.
awful lot of people are reading your book, by the way.